Don't help. Don't help. Oh, well. I can use one of those get out of jail free cards.
All right, the time is 6:30, and I'll call this work session of the mayor and council to order. We'll go over our regular scheduled meeting agenda first. We'll have the invocation. You'll all receive a copy of the announcements, ceremonial matters. We'll have 2 proclamations tonight. The minutes, we have both minutes from August 12th and August 26th. Does anybody have any questions or objections to the minutes?
Yes, we're going to ask to have an amendment to amend the minutes. Basically amend it to, I'll get to you. Basically, I mean, I don't have to use it. Basically, I'm just correcting it that there was not a 2000, there was some confusion over the end date of the terms. And it's kind of like we thought we were voting for a 4-year term for an empty seat for Ms. Forbes, and you thought we were voting for a term that ended in 2015. And there's confusion about whether there is one in 2015, except for Mr. Harrison's, but his wasn't available at the time of the vote. So it kind of like, it's just a mess. I think we need to just change that and then bring it up again, re-vote on it, put Ms. Forbes in where the council had intended to go, move forward.
I understand what you want, but my nomination was clear. There was a vacancy of 2017 and another vacancy. I clearly didn't say 2017, so there was an issue as to whether Mr. Warner's term expired in 2015 or not, and that was council's place to bring up a point of order. The minutes are to reflect what was said at a meeting, not what you understood or what anybody's intent was. So are you saying that I didn't say June 30th, 2015 in my motion?
No, I didn't say
Then
that.
the minutes are accurate.
But it wasn't the intention of the council. I think
But
the
that's
minutes should
not the-
reflect the intentions of council.
That's not the purpose of the minutes. The minutes are a recording of what happened. It's like a transcript of the meeting. So Ms. Arnold takes down what we said, not what we intended.
I'm going to ask her.
I
I'm going to
had a
ask
question
her.
previously, it was postponed. Postponement was indefinite until we got the proper verbiage.
Okay, so we can postpone them.
We can postpone it again until we get proper verbiage, or the city attorney has an opinion, we can hear it.
We have no invited guests for tonight. Mr. Sanders, do you have a city manager report?
I do, and it will be surrounding the status of the LCI bid. There is an item on the agenda which I put on there hoping that we would be ready to move forward. DOT, when you receive bids on a project that they're overseeing with federal funds, they have to review, their construction engineer out of your district office has to review the bids. They are still doing that. We have only, we're doing well. We've only received one comment, and the comment was easily explained. It was the difference in what the bid price was on a small retaining wall versus what DOT has been paying for contract. And it's like John Davis said, when you buy concrete by the boatload, it's a lot cheaper than if you're just doing one retaining wall. So, but I do not have that go-ahead yet. But this is the impact of the bid. The low bid we received, and we've met twice with the low bidder. We are comfortable and confident that we can recommend them once we have the chance to award the bid. But the bids were higher than estimated. And we talked to several of the folks, contractors who came to the pre-bid meeting and did not bid to try to get an idea of why, what happened. And basically, they said that it is the recession knocked so many people out of business. There are fewer folks out there. There is less competition for bidding these projects, and they don't have to bid just to keep the doors open anymore. They've added their profit and overhead back in there. So the bids went up, as you can see from this number, these numbers on here, about $200,000. We had an estimate back in May, which was worked up much earlier in the year, of about $2.1 million for total construction, utilities, and lighting. Total construction, the bid that we got, we included the lighting, and so the total construction and the utilities came in at about 2.295, about a 10% increase over the estimate. The inspection will not change. Right-of-way acquisition, of course, is what it is. We, of course, have received a large check and have been reimbursed our 80% on the right-of-way acquisition. And we're, the city's remaining cost, right-of-way cost, that's what we've got in it, that 273. The total project then becomes, instead of 3,606, 3,807, which is about $201,000 more than projected. The good news there is DOT, when they give us the go-ahead, their overall budget is much more, it is about 3,943. So we've still got $143,000, $135,000 to play with there. I have heard nothing from DOT about them stopping the project. They're just waiting on the engineers' final comments on the bids. So we have room within the overall DOT budget, even though we're much closer to the root than we were. But what this does, when you factor in the 80% federal and the 20% local, our city share goes up about $40,000. Now, we have some good news regarding that. We've received close to $200,000 out of the escrow fund that the court was holding. 20% of that is $40,000. It's funny how these things work out. There is still one amount of money still in there, I believe, the TISMA money. And so, it's not going to exceed, we hope it won't exceed that number, and hopefully there will be, some money coming back on it. But I feel like with the money we've got back, 20% of which is ours, I feel like we can cover that $40,000. So that's where we are, guys.
Originally, our right-of-way acquisition costs were over budget. We were hoping that the construction costs were going to be lower than anticipated to make up some of that right-of-way acquisition costs. So where do we stand, I guess, overall?
If this project had been bid as recently as a year ago, we would have met those numbers easily. In the last year, the market has changed to the point that with the low bid that we received, factoring in the low bid, that's what I did on this right-hand column, we are about $201,000 more. The budget has increased by $201,000, and that's all in construction, in the construction bid. Went up about 10% over where we were estimating that. And we are responsible for 20% of that, which is about $40,000.
Right, but what were we over in the right-of-way acquisition, do you know, budget?
I just know where we were. We had $1.4 million in right-of-way acquisition costs. And I think the original budget was somewhere around $600,000.
So can you get to us what, now based on these new construction costs, what our total over budget amount would be?
Yes, it's right there. It's that $40,000. And that bottom right-hand.
Right, but you're saying, but our right-of-way costs, we actually were over budget in those. This is what we've actually spent.
But we
what
had
was our
that-
budgeted amount?
the budget for the overall project?
Right. When we
The-
first started, I mean, I know we've amended it now to pay that 1.4 million,
Mhm.
but when we first started, we had only budgeted how much for right-of-way acquisition?
I will get you that exactly. I don't have that in front of me, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000. I mean, it went up significantly. And I
Because we had thought we were gonna recoup some of that 600,000 by lower construction costs. So we're out the 40,000 for the higher construction costs, plus some of the 600,000 we thought we were gonna recoup,
that
right?
40,000 is our share of the 200, which, so the actual construction cost with all in, lighting and installation was about $200,000 more than where we thought it would be.
But also, you gotta remember that, the original construction cost didn't include the, electricity under the road, didn't include the utilities, didn't include the phone, that was all stuff that we have found out the last year, correct? So,
Last 18 months,
which is
I'd
almost $600,000 also, over $600,000.
Almost 900.
Almost $900,000 was never figured in the budget until we got to the point where it was time to submit everything to GDOT. So basically, we're really over a lot more. I mean, you can't even, that was never even figured into the equation anywhere. And it's $900,000 of real money that had to be spent. So that's reflected in these figures. So again, to end up with a $40,000 city share, although we certainly would be preferable to be zero or a rebate, considering that there's $900,000 in there that we didn't anticipate originally, and the fact that we're $200,000 over budget on construction, I think $40,000 is not.
That's an increase.
That's
We
not
budgeted
accurate.
420.
I understand, but
We
additional
budgeted
40,000 is what I'm saying.
And I'm just
Yeah,
giving you the news.
I got you, but I think the
We've
additional
spent more than
40,000.
40,000 on this project.
Oh, yeah.
though.
I mean,
No,
we
no,
spent
the overage, what's the difference in what was the city now as it was in the beginning?
20% of the right-of-way costs, which the city has paid, $273,000.
Right, but we're over more than $40,000, because as we've gone along, we've increased our budget to take money out of the general fund or of the SDS settlement or somewhere to make up the 800,000 for the right of way.
I don't know where your original costs came from.
Can you get
I know
can
the
you get
only,
that information?
I will, the only thing I can tell you for sure is the DOT overall budget, however it got there, and with whatever changes, we are still underneath that number by about $140,000. So,
And let me make sure I have this right. I understand that we spent other money out, but I don't know about any money transferred out of general fund. I know that in one budget year, we're putting $400 and some thousand out of reserves into the budget. We anticipated we were going to spend that for right away. That was last year because you took that $400,000
That's right,
back
that was
out
in
of
there
it.
last
But
year.
other than that, I don't know of any other transfers we've made for purchase or anything,
Didn't
or anything with LCI.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and look.
I'd be interested.
And I know the numbers have changed, but, you know, they have changed for a lot of good reasons. I mean, and at one point in time, we were gonna be responsible for a lot more than 20% of that utility cost. I mean, we negotiated and beat our heads together with DOT to, you know, to get that to the 20% figure. So it's just, and I know that, you know, the right of way is the same thing, but it's not unusual. When you have a project that is closing in on 10 years old, the numbers are gonna change, guys. And so all I've tried to do is keep it to where it's manageable, to where it costs us the least amount of money to get it done. And we have a contractor that we have met with a couple times, asked a lot of questions of, feel comfortable with. Obviously, DOT feels comfortable with the bid. We've only had that one comment. And so we will definitely be ready to once they give us the go-ahead, to recommend the award and set up a pre-construction meeting and get to work.
So
Wasn't
this is
some
how-
like 400,000 supposed to come back?
Excuse me?
The
And went out.
400,000 was transferred last year, that was,
It all came back.
okay, so we're not,
We didn't use it. It never came
so we
out.
have put no money from the general fund?
That's in this year's budget in the LCI.
Right, but as far as
449.
anything over and above, we're still within the original parameters.
Based on the number I saw in last year's budget,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
So is this coming off tonight's agenda then, what you're telling us?
Yes.
To go on to the next agenda or to wait?
I may, my problem is I am not going to be here at the next meeting. I may ask for a quick call meeting or let Mr. Davis present it, but we'll be ready to go and we'll have everything tied up.
That brings us then to our old business public hearing on the ZOA 13-02 community living arrangements. Elective residences, I'm sorry.
I have an extensive detailed motion if you should choose me to make the motion. I think it reinforces our grandfather, and I'll let Tony Powell explain anything more.
That was the key. I think everybody looked at and you've gotten recommendations from the planning commission regarding the core part of the ordinance itself. Really, it got no communications about any specific problems with group homes or collective residences, depending on what term you use, is it group home or personal care home or assisted living facility. You have, and a part of this motion is designed to grandfather these. Golden Life, 3153 Dove Circle, Suite B. Comfy Personal Care, 2460 Skylar's Mill Way. Divine Care Assisted Living, 2013 Chancellor Court. Eva and Irma's House, 2641 Abington Drive. Funzabella Personal Care Home, 2861 Hickory Trail. Good Faith Assisted Living, 2075 North Road. Good Faith Assisted Living, 3123 Skyland Drive. Kiss Care Personal Care Home, 2793 Skyland Drive. L&L Loving Care, 3090 Eastland Way. Mahoney Assisted Living, 2845 Eldorado Way. My House 2 Community Care, 2721 Ravenwood Drive. My House Community Care, 2836 Ravenwood Drive. Samuda Personal Care, 2752 Skyland Drive. Tender Hands Home Care, 3025 Sonia Lane. Radberry Lane, which is 2379 Radberry Lane. Ashley Forest, 3094 Ashley Forest Drive. Chaparral CLA, 2159 Chaparral Drive. Kids Care Gwinnett Home, 2552 Poplar Street. High Hope Service Center, Oak Manor, 1985 Oak Road. And what that constitutes is these are folks that already have registered themselves with the city and with the state and are currently in existence. So they would get grandfathered under the motion. The motion has two restrictions, is that this is the only list. So if there are people who have been in a closet, haven't disclosed themselves, haven't gotten registered with the state, they're not getting grandfathered by this motion. The other part of it is sort of a two-step process. If they change their registration, what they are doing now and registered to do with the state, then they fall in the same category with everybody else. You gotta come in and apply for the SUP. And then there's a clause that gives them 90 days to either get a SUP or close down. That's the way that motion reads, to take care of the grandfathering issue, which I think is what was the main question.
Some questions. Did any of those businesses come into existence after 2011?
I don't know that. I mean, Mr. Davis would have to tell us.
So none of them are, none of them came in after we did the 1 acre requirement?
No, ma'am, they were all existing, and we had at one time 31 total, and
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shepherd. I have just some general questions about the ordinance as it was written. We, some history, we went back, I think it was in late 2011, early 2012, we rewrote our group home ordinance, so that we were on the same page as the county. We added the 1 acre minimum requirement and et cetera, et cetera. We still were getting referrals from the county to come to the city of Snellville, and so that's why we started this process again. And so in the county, their group homes are all in commercial areas except for what they call family personal care homes, which can be in residential areas, but they have to have a special use permit if they're in a residential area. So they still have all of those requirements, the 1 acre, et cetera, the square footage and everything that we put in our original ordinance, but if it's in a residential area, they have to have that special use permit as well. And the ordinance that your firm has written for us for tonight, it takes out all of those square footage requirements and 1 acre minimum requirements, and it puts in just a special use permit for everyone. So my question, I have a couple questions on that. First, it includes CCRCs and our RHOP places, and those are actually special zonings that we've said these areas, we've already, so why would we include those? Why would we make it more difficult for those places to be a community living?
Our definition of CCRC for the purposes of this ordinance comes from the state permitting requirements.
But we have a definition in our zoning ordinance, and so.
I'd be willing to bet those are not exactly overlapping definitions, that this is the state continuing care retirement community definition. Now, I'm not sure of that, but you know, it would place them in a special use permit procedure in order to be, it would be more intense than what you've got now in terms of its standards and requirements.
And I guess my bottom line is, in reading it, it kind of muddied stuff up instead of making it easier to follow. I mean, to me, we wanted people to know, hey, if you're coming into a residential area, you have to meet at least all of these criteria: the 1 acre lot, the square footage, and then you still have to apply for a special use permit. And so the way we've done it now, it's just a special use permit. Does that, I mean, are there issues with that? I mean, we're not giving any, we're making it more discretionary. I mean, we're not saying you have to meet X, Y, and Z. We're just saying anyone that the council chooses can have a special use permit. So is there any, I guess, using the word equal protection comes to mind, but that's not the word I'm actually looking for.
Yeah, it would apply equally to all of them. The intensity of review and the ability of the council to control the issuance of a permit is, I couldn't tell you, but it's ratcheted up significantly. And you know, it was in its previous form, it was a conditional use permit, which is a matter of right. You check off those blanks and council has no control. It's not that way anymore. This gives you teeth, so that where it doesn't belong, you have ratcheted standards by which you
But we don't
have to
put
approve.
minimum standards, we just leave it to council's control.
Well, no, there are a whole bunch of
Doesn't that
minimum
really just
standards.
force everybody to come to the table though?
No, it's not totally discretionary with council. The SUP part of it gives you the discretionary control. The actual ordinance standards, the conditions for collected revenues, you gotta meet those. You got a whole bunch more than you used to. You got 2 pages worth of stuff you have to do now. 3. You got 3 pages and a whole bunch of financial controls that go with it. I mean, it's in no comparison. You have to meet pages 7, 8, and 9 are required requirements of the ordinance. It's unquestionably much more difficult to qualify under these. But you're dealing with the issues of failure of financial responsibility for escrow funds and operating nonprofits, which is one of their bigger failures. And it ratchets up that protection so that it's not just in the initial approval process, but it's something that the planning director, if you had somebody who was taking money from their residences and spending their Social Security on unauthorized things, it would be a grounds for pulling the SUP.
But but it gets it in front, it gets it out in front of all of us.
No question.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
that's-
yeah. And ratchets up both the requirements and setbacks, and, I mean, there's no comparison between the difficulty of qualifying for this ordinance as compared to the old ordinance. And that's what I thought the purpose of redrafting was. We missed the mark the first time.
And so what about the, sorry, I can't do things at once. What about the CCRCs, the RHOPs? We talked last meeting about the battered women's shelters, the things that we were not, I mean, those are things we're trying to encourage in our community, but not necessarily, you know, we don't want the senior living or things we're trying to encourage to come here. So how's this?
Anything that, as long as they meet the criteria of those last 3 pages, which is financial accountability, nonprofit status, nonprofit ownership, you know, continue to report, do all the things that.
But assisted living homes are CCRCs, and they're not gonna be they're not gonna meet that criteria. If you look at our zoning definition of a CCRC.
They're probably not gonna be in your city then.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but we've heard, I mean, if that's what council's saying, but we have created, you know, before we stood up and created the zoning ordinance saying we want those things around the hospital, we wanna encourage senior housing.
Right. Well, the coordination of this ordinance with the CCRC, what you're talking about, is something nobody's asked me. I'll be glad to look at it. I'll be glad to tell you how it impacts them, but, you know, you have to pull the other part of the zoning ordinance if you want me to look at. If you want me to look at that issue, I'll be glad to, but it's just not something that's been raised before. Now, this ordinance under the SUP class won't preclude that ordinance from working, but it'll have to be in the context of the SUP process too. So.
I mean, whatever council wants to do, does anybody else have any questions? I just think it's become messier instead of cleaner.
Do you want the acreage back in there and the footage? Is that where your main issues are, or just?
Well, I think Tony clarified that they still have to comply, page 7 and 8 with acreage, and it's not just discretionary special use
I don't think we
permit.
have an acreage requirement in here. I just said we had, you know, mandatory requirements that they have to meet. Now, they'll have to comply with the acreage requirements of the zoning class that they're in.
Number one, must meet all the district criteria for lot
Right.
development.
Right,
Opportunities.
but the issue was if we have these opening in our neighborhoods, we didn't want them on just a single-family residence. We wanted them on a 1 acre minimum lot size, and, you know, if you've got, 3 or more unrelated people, we wanted to make sure there was sufficient square footage. And so we've put in financial requirements and licensing requirements, but we've done away with the zoning requirements that we worked to establish in the last one.
Well, I don't think all of them are missing, but if you want, but it's like Diane said, if you want a 1 acre requirement to be part of it, nobody on the planning commission or to this point has said that that was a criteria anybody wanted. So, I mean, it's easy to put back in if that's what.
The 1 acre requirement was to put us on parity with the county.
So it was
What
a
we
square
have
footage.
here, the problem I saw with that is you've got something that's 0.78 of an acre. It perfectly meets it, but now you have to give them a special variance, which brings up the question, where do you stop? Is 0.78 the break point, or is 0.75 okay, and on and on and on? This takes all of that out of it and pretty much allows the council to look at it and say, that suits that particular district, that area, and we can go ahead with it provided they meet the requirements. The biggest issue that I saw was you had all these people coming in that are ripping off the people they're supposed to be taking care of, and we have no way to
And we
control
dealt
it.
with that. We dealt with that issue.
Yeah.
On the 1 acre thing, if you're gonna vary the 1 acre requirement by variance, that's discretionary with the council anyway.
Right.
Then, you know, and this is one of the great tools that's built into this ordinance, but it's the special use process. The criteria says if you wanna allow an intense use, that's a special use procedure inside of a residential area, and you wanna solve some of the problems that creates. If it's a 1 acre lot, you can condition, that's what the special use process is really designed to do. If you think it needs to be 5 acres, if you think it needs to be 10, I mean, it's, you've got some flexibility when it comes to the permitting process to set the, and if you're doing that anyway with variances, this procedure's better. Now, if you want a 1 acre minimum requirement that you're gonna live by, and say this is the hard rule, then, you know, we can just write that back in.
Well, the bar is so high to begin with. I mean, entry into this is, there's a lot of criteria to meet. And those folks that are in it for the right reasons will strive to do those things. Those that are not, they'll read it,
They won't get to
"Nah,
that
I'm not
point."
gonna put up with that, I'm gonna move them down the road." So I think the good ones will continue to put forth their opportunity, and the bad ones just simply won't. That's kind of what I'm saying.
If it doesn't hurt to add that 1 acre requirement in, you know, and that gives us a little bit higher level of,
Does it add a tooth?
Will it hurt us?
Yeah, well, it means you should not vary from that, that's what it means. I mean,
I'm-
it's gonna be
that's
the shelter that's on its .78. If you put that in there, you should say no, because that's the criteria you set. So, I mean, it's eliminating, you know, when you put the criteria in there as a demand requirement, it should be lived by, and, so. But it's up to you.
Well, did we ever have any consideration under zoning that we would vary from that 1 acre?
That's, I don't know. I don't think it
You know,
ever came
well,
in front of us.
as
as
in the
a-
zone, before this came up, in the old ordinance where the zoning said it had to be 1 acre, there was no provision in there for allowing less than 1 acre. I mean, it was 1 acre unless they went and got a variance, correct?
They had to get a variance, and
It was under an acre.
if it was under an acre.
Right.
What Tony has done with his draft, I think, and I'm not a lawyer, okay, so we'll just say that to start with. I think what he's done is he's given us a tool that allows us to control what happens in this arena without coming across with a tool that is a blatant discrimination against
Yeah.
housing.
There you go.
As I understood it, and Tony, you can turn around and tell me I'm crazy, okay?
I see him.
I know, he does it on a regular basis. As I understood my research, a personal care home, a CLA, whatever, they are residential uses. They belong in residential areas. That's the whole process behind them. If you start saying that, Jamie here can have a house, and he has his family in it, and there are 25 people in his family, and he can be on a 1/3 acre lot, but I can't bring in my personal care home with 8 people in it on a 1/3 acre lot. You've created a situation that opens you up, I think, to some legal problems. What Tony has come up with the special use permit allows us to look at every individual applicant. And it says, okay, you have 4 people with these problems. We think you need to have X, Y, Z. And it lets us tailor this ordinance to the uses without setting up criteria that force us to go through variance processes all the time. And quite frankly, what scares me about a variance process is once you start issuing variances, it's like the sign ordinance, what we had to do with sign ordinance. We issued variance after variance after variance for the same thing. So why not make it part of the law to begin with? This is another way of looking at how we control individual impacts in neighborhoods. And this is a much cleaner, neater, easier to utilize tool than just saying, you gotta have a 2 acre lot or an acre lot.
Well, that's my point. With this, we don't need to parity with
Right.
the county, because we're going at it from a whole different
We're
direction.
going at it from a whole different direction.